Hello and welcome back to the show. So, our special guest today is Melissa Nash, who is not only a fantastic real estate agent, but also a real estate investor herself. So, Melissa, as a real estate agent, has actually developed a system where she helps other real estate investors purchase rental properties, even thousands of miles away. And as an investor, she has built up her own portfolio to over seven figures, even helping her own kids buy rental properties before they even turn 18. We're definitely going to be digging a little bit into that. And now she's actually helping other agents with through the lazy agent system, which actually helps real estate agents generate referral commissions for helping real estate investors purchase rental properties all the way up to $15,000 in referral commission. So if you're a real estate agent out there that wants to learn how to invest, that want to learn how to work with investors, really tap into that market. Today's episode is definitely for you. So, Melissa, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you join us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation. I love to talk about what I do. I literally wake up every single day and love what I get to do and how it changes people's lives. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your background, right? So, you started out obviously as an agent and then an investor. So, share with us a little bit about your background so, the audience knows who's talking with them.
Yeah, perfect. So, I've been investing for about 12 years now. And, the backstory is my husband and I were entrepreneurs. We owned a business. We live here in Southern California. And well, at the time when we did this, we actually lived in Washington State. And 2008, 2009 crash kind of happened. We owned an apparel company where we were manufacturing overseas. And long story short, we were wholesaling to stores and they all started kind of going out of business one by one during that time. And so we kind of closed down that business. We were lucky enough to sell it. I wouldn't say that we sold it for a huge profit. We were kind of just like, getting rid of it and just kind of sorting it out. But anyways, then I was kind of on this path of like, okay, what is a recession-proof business? What would that be? And I just kept coming back to real estate. And a lot of people would argue that they think that real estate is actually not a recession-proof business. But I came to the conclusion that if you look at timeline of real estate always goes back up in value. Real estate always goes up, no matter where you live, no matter what market you are, or where you live or what market you're in. Housing is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And so I always had this fascination about real estate. So anyway, so long story short, I thought, okay, I'm going to become a real estate agent. So at this time we'd been living in California, and so I was like, I want to invest in real estate, but I think I need to get my license. So I got my license, and no, I didn't learn anything about real estate investing through that. I learned how to be like, a tour guide. I learned how to sit at open houses. I learned how to, it was kind of a hospitality business in a way. And so I was getting frustrated because I was a new agent and things just weren't moving fast enough for me. And I was being impatient. And so I kind of seeked out information on my own. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just start doing all of this research on being a good real estate agent and bringing in business and bringing in leads, and then I started looking at agents who I thought were successful and what were they doing. And I started noticing something. The agents that spent the least amount of time in the office and had the most free time and were making the most were the agents that were kind of focused on investors, not owner occupied. And so I was befriending an agent in the office, and she was like telling me about 1031 exchanges and all this stuff. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is. Why don't I know what that is? And she was telling me about how she's running numbers on all this stuff. And I was like, wait a minute, I should know this. I don't know any of this. So that kind of led my journey of me seeking out information on how can I find investors? How can I work with investors? And what would that look like? So I'll kind of stop there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of agents out there who might have a similar background or a similar story to yours where, or, certain point, right, where they want to learn how to become an investor themselves. They think getting a real estate license and becoming an agent is the way to do so, but they quickly realize that that is not the case, right? You're not learning really on the job how to become an investor. So you realize that and you were starting to look at other agents who are doing the same thing, who were working with other investors. So what are some of the things that you learned in the beginning that really you would say differentiates an agent that works with investors versus one that, is just working with any other buyer or seller client? What's some of the main and core skills that you would need to develop in order to begin actually working with real estate investors?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I think we should go back and define real estate investor because that was the big kind of aha moment for me. It was like I assumed that a real estate investor was, somebody rich, somebody wealthy, somebody who, wore a business suit and bought commercial buildings and, downtown Los Angeles. Like that's what I thought. And I quickly found out that there are a lot of people who actually are investors, but they don't call themselves investors. In fact, one of my very first clients that I picked up, I met her. She's a teacher in Southern California, let's say making, I don't even know, $100,000 a year. Not even that. It was probably like $85,000 a year. And she now owns 5 rental properties. Still to this day, she won't call herself an investor. She doesn't see herself as an investor because she's not doing it as a full-time career. If you ask her what she does for a living, she's a teacher. She just happens to own these properties that I happen to help her get. 3 of them were out of state. And we were able to tap into her equity in her home that she had a ton of equity. A lot of people, especially in expensive areas, have equity in their homes. And I call that lazy money. It's just sitting there not doing anything. And so we were able to tap into that and help her buy these properties. But yeah, so I think defining like what an investor is part of the mindset that kind of shatters our set beliefs. So once I realized that like anybody can be an investor, your neighbor next door, your sister, the teacher, anybody can be an investor. Now it opens up the possibilities. Because guess what? Investors don't want to buy just one property. They want to build a portfolio. And then they're going to do it again and they're going to come back to you again and again. And then other people are going to see what they're doing. And this is how I've built such a long business doing this for 10 years. I've helped over 2,000 people buy investment properties. And it's because they're telling people about it too, because everybody wants to mimic what somebody else is doing. And they're like, hey, how are you doing that? How are you buying that property? And they're like, well, let me tell you, let me introduce you to Melissa. She helped me do this. And so you have to be confident with, again, well, back to what I just said, just to kind of confirm that is like, anybody can be an investor. So let that, kind of change your mindset. And then after that, we got to understand they're coming to us as the expert. This type of client. Again, I'm not talking about the businessman in the suit that's buying, these $1 million projects that know exactly what they want. These are people that are like, hey, I'm trusting you. So that means that I need to understand the numbers and what a spreadsheet looks like and how to run an investment property. And the important things to them, is am I going to make money or am I going to lose money? That's really what it comes down to, and they're trusting me to do that. So yeah, so we just got to get comfortable with the terms and with running a spreadsheet. And it's not that hard. Everything I do is plug and play. It's like Excel does it for you, so it's not as scary.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of the things that people need to understand, right? That there's so many people who are like you mentioned, like mom and pop, like individuals, right? That want to buy rental properties, right? And build up a portfolio. They're not like the quote unquote full-time investors who are like flipping hundreds of houses a year, right? Who, might be even kind of adversarial towards an agent because they want to, they think they know everything and they're doing everything themselves. You're really
Yep.
working with people who are, they have their career, they have extra money and they want to put it into real estate as a passive investment. And you're helping them kind of essentially manage that, right? And helping them get into properties, right? Whether if it's, in their area or even like help other people with, right? In a different state.
That's it exactly. And one of the things too that I like to point out is I live in California, right? I live in a very expensive market, and the math doesn't really math here for a lot of people in the situations like this. And so I first started off doing short-term rentals, helping people do that. because the math makes more sense here because you can cash flow higher. But there's a lot of problems with that. There's a lot of regulations. There's a lot of cities and towns shutting down. I was first doing stuff actually in Anaheim. This was, I mean, 12, 14 years ago. And I was working with a property manager over there and just kind of helping some investors. And the city of Anaheim came out and said, no more short-term rentals. It was definitely the hotels and the lobbyists and stuff that were, shutting all that down was behind it all. Um, so overnight, like hundreds of people had to like figure out how they're going to get rid of these properties that were short-term rentals now. And so I quickly learned that if I wanted to continue helping people, I had to be able to look outside of California. So then I was like, okay, well, how can I help these people in California buy properties that make sense in another state? And so that is the system that I have built out. And quite frankly, I've gate kept it for the last 10 years because I'm like, this is amazing. I literally work from my pajamas. I don't do any business in California anymore. Everything is out of state. And no, I'm not licensed out of state. So that's part of my secret and my gatekeeping is how am I helping all of these investors and how am I helping them get into properties out of state and how am I getting paid for it? So that's a little teaser on what I've been finally kind of putting together for agents is teaching them how to do that. But the bigger picture, taking a step back, is before we get to that, we have to again understand, and get confident and get really comfortable with how to run the numbers. Like I don't use cap rate on a single family, and that's probably like you if you go in and Google or if you go into AI and you chat and you're like, hey, what are all the things that I need to know about an investment property? They're going to go yada yada yada, cap rate. And I learned early on, going back to my clients, they just want to know how hard their money is working for them. That's it. Like at the end of the day, that's all they want to know and that's all they care about. Like you said, this is a passive hands-off thing. They're not dealing with the property. And so I would say the best advice I would give to an agent listening right now is look into running, and I'll explain to you guys how I do it. But cash on cash return is the number one number that I want, and I would recommend everybody to understand. And basically, what that is any property you're looking at, we're going to take all the expenses and we minus all the expenses, and then we have the profit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to divide that by the buyer's down payment and closing costs. So if their total down payment and closing cost was $30,000 and their total profit on the property is $5,000, we're going to divide those two. And then that's going to show you a percentage, and that's called the cash on cash return. So let's say, just throwing out math, it's 10% that first year. That means their money is working at 10%. Their hard-earned money, like they pulled that money out of their savings account, and that means that they are earning 10% on their dollars. And that's really what these types of investors care about and they want to know because they're used to buying stocks. And stocks tell you that. They tell you exactly what you're earning. So that's why I like to look at that number because it's easier for our minds to go, wait a minute, if I leave it in my savings account and it's earning 0.001, or I could put it into a rental property and I can earn 10%, like that's it. The deal's closed. They're in.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And that's why I think a lot of people are shifting towards investing in real estate as well, right? Because they're seeing the benefits of it. And also real estate's a tangible asset as well, which makes it so that it's something where you can see, you know where it is. And, one of the things that I think a lot of agents might have a question on, or maybe that they struggle with as they start exploring working with real estate investors is just that, they feel maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? Where, they're not an investor yet themselves, or they feel like they're not confident or qualified enough to work with investors. So, I mean, is that something that, what would you say to an agent who might be struggling with this, who might, come to you and say, I've been an agent for a little bit, but I've never invested, so I don't really know how I can help a real estate investor, because I don't actually own any rental properties yet.
Well, two things. Like, hey, let's help you buy a rental property then. Let's get you comfortable, that's one thing. But then also, you know what? At the end of the day, um, fake it till you make it, and I don't mean that I'm not saying for somebody to fake it and be like fake. That's just kind of the saying idea of it is as long as you know more then the person you're helping, I don't know if you've seen the movie Catch Me If You Can. That reminds me of that is, one of the things that they said later, and it was a true story about this Abernathy guy that went around and like faked all these careers. And one of his jobs that he had, he was like a professor of law or something like that. And he actually showed up in the classroom and faked to the classroom that he was this law teacher. And they, at the end, after they arrested him and stuff, and they're like, we figured out all the things and all the people that you like were acting to be, but we don't understand, how did you teach law at like Harvard or something crazy? And he was like, I stayed one chapter ahead of the students. And so I always think about that. And I think about the early days when I got started. I absolutely knew nothing. And I actually think that probably helped me. I think I'm at a point where I know too much. And so I have to remember to break it everything down. Like I'm constantly trying to remember, simplify, simplify, simplify. People don't want a lot of information. A lot of times, these people, again, these investors that I work with, they're busy working professionals and they make 20 decisions a day, probably more, hundreds of decisions a day. And some people literally just call me and they go, tell me what to do. Just, I trust you. Just tell me what to buy, tell me where to go, tell me what the numbers look like. If you approve it, I trust you. And so, going back to just being confident, you need to learn terminology. Obviously, I think that's really important. But then also, it's just putting in the reps. So, I have people, practicing using the spreadsheets, using the plug and play spreadsheets to just practice putting in properties. I mean, you can like pull up any random property on Zillow and you can just, grab it and just throw the numbers in there and just practice, and then practice saying and repeating terms until you're comfortable with it. It's just going to be putting in the reps. But at the end of the day, it's really, really not complicated. Again, people just want to know how hard their money is working for them, and they want somebody to trust and tell them what to do. So, you realtors listening, you know what you're doing. You know real estate. You know how to help people. You are a people person. This is a people business. You know how to do that. You just have to now get confident with those numbers, and it's just the reps and it's just practice.
Yeah, 100%, right? It's just a different thing that you have to learn. It's a different niche, right, of clients that you're trying to serve. So if you're able to go in and study that, and you mentioned also practicing it, that's where you're going to be able to develop that skill set. So I think for agents out there, right, you mentioned one of the other things is, why don't we, figure out a way to get you rental property, right, and become an investor as well. So, for you, when you first started investing in real estate, is that something that you found that you had to juggle a little bit with also helping other investors that might be looking at your same market? I know for a lot of agents, that might be another question that comes up a lot, which is if I'm investing and I have a client who's also investing, is there some kind of, conflict of interest? Is that something you actually had to deal with, or do you find that there's usually not that conflict of interest if you are also an investor and you're working with an investor as an agent?
Yeah, so that's really funny because I have people ask me all the time. They're like, if I'm showing somebody a bunch of properties, and I have off-market sources that I work with and I've built up now over the years. So I literally get people sending me properties and that I can now share with my clients. And yeah, I buy some of them myself too. But people ask me that all the time. They're like, well, if these deals are so great, why don't you buy them all? I'm like, well, first of all, I would love to, but I am bound to a budget just like you are. I have to save up and put my 20% down also, or I have to find an opportunity that just happens to land on my desk that, you know, that I can do something cool on it, like a seller financing or something like that. So I am looking for those deals. I am taking advantage of them, and I am buying them as well. And I think that's the cool thing is I think that's why my clients trust me, is because I'm like, hey, I'm in it with you. I'm buying them too. I'm using the same lenders. I'm using all the same systems. And yeah, I wish I could buy them all up, but I don't have billions of dollars, so I can't.
Right, exactly. Everybody's bound to the same budget, right? So it's not like, you have this endless budget where you can buy anything and everything that you want to,
Right.
just because you're getting kind of like first dibs or, first, on the deals where you're getting kind of, one of the first people to actually see it. So I think that's really interesting as well. And you have been an investor for a while too, right? So you've been investing in real estate and you've built up your own portfolio. So walk us through maybe, what are some of the benefits for an agent, right? Because there's a lot of agents who are in real estate that want to build wealth, but never really start investing themselves. So why is it important for a real estate agent to also become an investor, just like you guys have done and have built up your portfolio quite substantially, actually?
Yeah. So, I'll talk about short-term look at because a lot of agents live in expensive markets, like I mentioned earlier. And yes, you can help investors buy in other markets. And that's kind of what the program is that I'm developing over there. But short-term rentals, anybody can do that in any market wherever they live. I don't care if you live in an expensive market. You can do midterm rentals. You can, help people buy houses that they're gonna turn around and rent to. There's a lot of companies out there that will rent to people like if with a disaster that happens, like here in California with the wildfires in LA. All those people were displaced and they all need a place to live. So they ended up renting these houses that used to be short-term rentals that are now kind of long-term rentals, but they're paying short-term rental prices. But the insurance company is paying for it. There's, the midterm rentals where you've got traveling nurses and you've got traveling pilots and flight attendants and you've got business people. There's always weddings and funerals and there's people that need to come to towns for a reason. So don't just think of like vacation hotspots. There's always a need for people to come to a city in an area. And so when I first really started investing, I did buy some properties out of state. And then I was like, hey, I want to kind of get into short-term rentals. So to answer your question, me getting into it made me realize what really is involved. And it absolutely shocks me that there's so many agents that are out there teaching people how to buy short-term rentals that have no idea what they're doing and they have no idea what they're telling people. So personally, I think it's an ethical problem at this point because they're telling people that they're going to get these crazy big returns and they're actually not, because they don't know the number. So ethically, if you're teaching somebody how to buy a short-term rental, you should know what you're teaching people. There's all kinds of costs that you have to include. Like, for example, if you have a guest at your house and they decide they want to take 10 bubble baths a day, well, guess what? You're paying for that water. And so you always have to add extra expenses that you don't think you're going to have to add. So just because the last person who owned that house was an owner occupied and their water bill was, let's say, 150 bucks a month, I guarantee you that's not going to be your water bill at the short-term rental, unless you're at really low occupancy rates. But if you're at high occupancy rates, people don't care. They turn on the water, they leave the lights on, they turn up the heat. They're rough with things, they don't care about, your dishes and they don't care about the pots and pans and, they don't care about the linens. And so we're constantly replacing those things. So me becoming a short-term rental investor myself, I'm like, ah, I need to add more, to this number, or knowing now that I have to replace things more than I thought I did, I'm going to add that to my spreadsheet. So I think that it is a good idea if an agent can be an investor. But if you can't be, that's okay too. Just get the right information from the right people who are investors and see what the real numbers look like. That way you can really help people because at the end of the day, if somebody that you're helping is successful and you were honest with them and helped them be as profitable as they can be, they're going to come back to you. They're going to trust you and they're going to refer friends and family to you. And if they're upset with you because you helped them get in this property and the numbers weren't what they were, they're not going to come back to you and they're not going to refer you. So, you definitely, if you're not doing it yourself, you definitely need to seek out information from the right people.
Yeah, 100%, right? You want to make sure that either you have the experience doing it yourself or have an expert that you can count on, right? That can give you that same experience that you can now share with your clients too. So it's very important that, you have that information as an investor yourself. Obviously, you have that experience. You can obviously help somebody else. You can even draw on that for your marketing as well, where you can share with other people how you've done the same things, right? And you can help them do what you've done, right? Buying rental properties and owning short-term rental properties as well. So one of the cool things that I really, thought that you were able to do, like as I was reading your bio, was the fact that you're able to help your kids purchase rental properties before they even turned 18, which, for a lot of people that seems like one of the craziest things ever. So I don't know if you could, maybe share with us a little bit on how that worked and how you can actually, buy a rental property before turning 18, which is essentially the legal age, right, to own real estate.
Well, yeah, and so I will say though that, we're talking about with investment properties, you can get a DSCR loan, which is basically it qualifies the property, not you. Now, obviously, I am a co-signer on the properties. Well, I am the main owner of the properties, but they're in an LLC. So when you get a DSCR loan, then you're going to be able to put the property right into an LLC. And nobody cares who owns the LLC. You can add as many members as you want to. You can change it down the road. You can put it in a trust. You can do whatever you want with it. So technically, the loan is in the LLC, not me. So the loan is in the LLC and the title is in the LLC. Yes, my credit was run for it, not my children's credit. But yeah, so the first property that I actually helped my youngest daughter get, actually, she was 8 years old at the time, and we bought the property out of state because, again, I wanted a long-term rental, and it just did not. The math does not math here in California. And so I use my resources and my networks that I have out of state, and we bought a property for her out there. Now, of course, she doesn't know anything about it. She's 8 years old. But I try to talk to my kids about it and what it means and what it's going to do for them. And she went to school and told her teacher and her friends that she owns a house. And people were like, her teacher literally like texted me or messaged me or whatever. And she was like, Ruby's telling stories. And I was like, no, she's not. She actually has a house. But, and the kids were probably just like, okay, what a weirdo. What does that even mean? Um, and then my other two kids, they actually were able to put money in together as a down payment. So, the average down payment on the property they bought, I think was going to be around $30,000 down. And so they each pooled their money when they're about 18 years old. Well, my one daughter was 18 and my son's 2 years younger than her. So he was 16. And so they had a little bit of money in savings because we live in Los Angeles and everybody around here does some type of acting or modeling when they're kids. And so they had some money from that kind of stuff that we, packed away into a savings account, was basically earning nothing. And so they kind of put their money together and we bought them a rental together that they still own. And it's kind of a set it and forget it thing. These are long-term buy and hold strategies. We're talking about cash flowing. Well, at the time when they bought them, $250 to $300 a month. Nothing crazy, but those are returns well over 10%. So their money is working hard for them. And then you just hold it long term. And like I said at the beginning, real estate goes up in value. So it's just, it's doing its thing. We just have to be patient and let it set. It's not California appreciation. It's not East Coast appreciation or anything like that. But that's not the strategy here. The strategy is just kind of set it and forget it kind of a thing where, you're not doing any of the work.
Yeah, and starting out so young, so early, I think that compounds so much more over time, right? You have such a longer runway. And if you understand compounding and appreciation, that's really where, the earlier you start, the better it's going to be long term. So I think that's really cool that you're able to do that, and really even involve your kids with it, before they even turn 18, which is really interesting. And you did mention buying real estate out of state, right? Because, living in California, it really is extremely difficult to become an investor locally. So, maybe you can share some of the, like you said, some of the gate kept secrets, right? That you're, now sharing with other agents. So what are some of the things that you look for when you help an investor buy properties out of state? Are you helping them actually pick the market? Or, is this something where, they themselves have determined certain cities they want to invest in, and then you're just linking up with another agent to kind of help create that bridge? What exactly does that look like, from like a one-on-one perspective?
Yeah, you can definitely do it that way where you're like, hey, let's help you pick a market and I'll find an agent in my network, or, every major office has connections with agents in other offices. And, I actually did that on a couple deals and I was just kind of like, wah wah, like the commission was really weak. You know what I mean? I was just kind of like, gosh, I wish I could have kept him here in California and got a full commission for that. And, it wasn't like anything crazy, big and exciting. And I wanted to be a part of it and I wasn't because I'm not licensed in those markets, and there wasn't anything I could do. It was just kind of like passing them off. And so, interesting enough, I was just networking a lot and trying to figure out like how I could buy properties. And so I was connecting with different people and different groups and different connections and different lenders. And, I was just kind of immersing myself, in this world. And it was way back when Bigger Pockets, I will say this, it was different. Bigger Pockets was a completely different place than it is today. And so I was going to like meetup groups, like local groups, and I was just connecting with people and having conversations. And I think that's the biggest thing is I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I was putting myself out there. And so essentially what I have done the last 10 years is I have built relationships with different people and different teams, particularly new construction builders who will pay you a full real estate commission to your broker or to you individually, however you want to do it. They'll pay you the full amount if you bring the buyer in. So now we're talking about, a 2.5% to 3% full commission that you're not sharing with any other agent. And it's because they're basically paying you the agent fee, but you're not the agent. You're not on paper. And so there's legal ways to do that, and there's a way around it, which is what I figured out is how do you actually do it, and what is the legal process of it, and who are these people, and why are they paying you so much? That is what I've put together, and anybody can repeat it, and anybody can do it themselves. It's really just it's a people business. It's connections, and then it's also understanding the process and how it works, and then it's repeatable.
Yeah. So that's really interesting, right? Because there are builders, right? They obviously love it when agents help actually bring them clients, right? Bring them buyers because it's their job to actually sell sell their property as quickly as possible. They don't want to hold it because all these construction costs and all the costs that goes into, actually investing and building it up. So it's really interesting how you're able to develop that strategy where you're going direct to builders and helping, investors buy essentially new construction properties. Is that correct? You're helping them invest in new construction and then going from there.
Yeah, and then I'm building out the entire system. So the the builders are grateful for me. They love me. They love to get an email from me. They're like, "Yes, thank you, Melissa. Welcome. This is what I have. You can have it all. We will gladly pay you, $15,000 commissions on these properties." And it's because of the system that I have built out. So again, at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about a lot of people don't realize that or they don't call themselves an investor, but there's so many people, everybody around you is an investor. So if you can identify somebody who is sitting on extra money, maybe somebody inherited money, maybe they inherited a property and they want to do a 1031 exchange. Maybe they have equity in their property. It's having conversations with people who are in your phone already, people that you know. So you're having these conversations with people and being like, hey, did you know that like I specialize in, helping you buy investment properties? And then if you live in an expensive market or you live in a market where there just isn't inventory or it's oversaturated, we can go to these other markets and you can create these relationships yourself. Now, the reason why these builders and people love to work with me is because when I come to them, I've already done all the work. My investor already trusts me. They know that I'm going to, show them the math and I'm going to show them the numbers. So when I run those numbers that the builders are giving me, I'm plugging it into my already, formula that I have that shows all the profit centers and it shows the returns. And then I take it and I can show it to my client and they're like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm in. So I'm running the numbers for them and essentially selling the dream. I'm not selling the property. I'm selling the dream of being an investor. So then by the time I introduce them to the builder, they're already like sold. So they're like, okay, cool, show me the deals, show me the property. So the builder is actually the one on contract. They're the ones doing all the inspections and arranging the appraisals. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just there as the advisor, helping the client through it all. They trust me. So I'm making the connections if they need it with, the LLC companies and then I'm introducing them to the property management because that's the other piece of it to make this passive. I've put together relationships with really good property managers in these areas. So everything is just a seamless system that I have built out. So now the builders are like, this is great. Melissa has a buyer that's ready to go. We're just going to grab them. We're going to help them buy a property. We're going to close them. they're good to go. And then guess what? They're going to come back and they're going to buy another and another. A lot of people actually use their 401ks to buy construction properties. So it's just a way of diversifying your portfolio and just not being just so stuck in the stock market. And so I would say that that's probably a bulk of money too that people are getting their money from that I forgot to mention is 401ks. But anyway, so yeah, it's really great. It's a win-win for everybody, and I get to work from wherever I want to be in my pajamas, and I'm not driving around showing houses, and I'm just running numbers on a spreadsheet and emailing it. I'll do, Loom recordings or whatever and show somebody what something looks like or if they have questions about it. And that's it. I'm not doing open houses. I'm not I'm not working weekends, and I'm not working evenings.
Yeah, that's awesome, right? That's the dream, I think, for so many agents out there where they're able to be, A, so much more efficient, right? Working from home, but also B, have repeat clients and still be able to earn essentially a full commission, right? Using their expertise. So I think this is really beneficial for a lot of agents out there, a lot of people who are thinking about working with investors. And just want to say, Melissa, thank you again for taking some time and being on the show today, sharing with us, giving us a little bit of a sneak peek into your system that you're rolling out for agents, right? So for anybody who's out there who's listening to this that want to get a hold of you, that want to learn more about what it is that you're building out, where are some of the best places for people to actually do that and to get connected with you?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to be old school. I'm going to throw out my email right now. So I'm
Mhm.
building out this brand new system, and I shared the link with you before. I don't know if you have ways of sharing the link with people. It's kind of a cumbersome link. But anyways, so go ahead and email me at info@hellomelissanash.com. You can also find me, on socials. And actually, I made a new account just for agents, and I'm going to look it up right now because I don't even know what it is. It is called it's called Investor Focused Agent. I'm Melissa Nash. So find me at Investor Focused Agent. Email me info@hellomelissanash.com. I actually have a waiting list for this program. I'm just finalizing it and kind of building out exactly what people really want, what agents need help with. And so more conversations I have with agents, the better, so that I can make sure that I'm really serving you guys and giving the information that you want to replicate it and do it because it's pretty awesome and I'm not gatekeeping it anymore.
Yeah, I know. What a great opportunity, right, for agents to actually learn this and be able to replicate your system. So definitely, Melissa, will leave the link to both your email as well as your waiting list for agents that want to learn this system in the description and the show notes down below. So make sure you guys, if you're interested, go check out that link. But other than that, just want to say thanks again for being on the show. Before we wrap up today, is there any just last pieces of advice, any last golden nuggets that you want to just leave with us here today?
Yeah, you guys don't be afraid of what you don't know. There's so much information out there. I mean, gosh, the world of AI is insane, and podcasts and, YouTube, and there's so much information out there, but there's also people out there teaching a million different strategies, and they're all great, and there's amazing people. I think it would be beneficial to figure out what type of agent you want to be because there are different types of investors. I specifically, you hear this all the time, niche down, niche down, niche down. I specifically have niche down to helping busy working professionals that want to buy passive rentals or they want to buy real estate as passively as possible. So that is what I particularly have niche down to. Now there's different types of investors. There are people who want you to help them find deals, wholesale deals, or the flippers that want you to help find undervalued properties. And there's commercial, there's so many different things out there, and I haven't focused on any of those other things. So don't ask me about wholesaling because I'm not going to be the person for you. And therefore people don't come to me about wholesaling because I'm not going to help them. And so I think niching down on, if you do want to start going into helping investors, figure out who that investor is that you want to serve, and also what are the resources. And if you're a real scrappy person, I mean, wholesaling is great, or helping flippers is great because you're out there knocking doors, finding those deals. It's very more active investing, but if that's your personality, go for it. Like, do what you feel is right. I'm just more like, hey, lifestyle. I want to be in my pajamas. I don't want to work open houses. I'm a very passive investor, and so therefore I think I'm naturally attracting other investors who want to be passive as well. So I think you generally go towards your personality type and who you are as well. So I would say that like niche down and be that go-to person in your office for that type of client. And then you're going to see people start referring you and they're going to be like, aha, like even narrowing it down to even short-term rentals. If you want to narrow it down that much more, you can. And then guess what? You're going to be known as the short-term rental agent in your office, and everybody's going to know you're awesome and everybody's going to refer you. So niche down, niche down, niche down.
Absolutely. That's some great advice. Melissa, thanks again for being on the show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next show. Take care.
Thank you.